have a zillion things to talk to you about, but I have one that I need to start with. And I don't know if you're expecting it or not, but it's been 4 years since the last time the school district ran a levy election, and we will be running one again in February. You may wonder, why are we doing that? Because didn't the legislators tell us that they are now fully funding education? Well, unfortunately, that's not really the case. They're fully funding the education, basic education, as they defined it. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of what that means for us in our school district. In our school district, according to the legislature, to keep all of our buildings clean and disinfected and safe for kids to be in, they think we need just barely 6 custodians total, day, night, everything, all those buildings and all those classrooms. We actually need over 13 custodians to keep the buildings clean and the toilets clean and the garbage is emptied. So we have to come up with the money to pay for that other half of the custodial needs, because the state isn't giving us salary money for that. The same thing with our technology department. In our technology department, the state funds just over 1 person. To keep everything running for our kids in our schools right now, we have 5, and we probably need 2 more, but we can't afford them. So those positions also have to be funded with local funds, or we have to find other places in our budget to do it. We have, I'm looking at Tammy, she can tell me the exact number because it changes every day, but we have about 140 classified employees. Only about 50 of those are funded by the state. All the rest of those non-teaching positions, we have to find a way to fund, but we need all of those people to assist kids and teachers in the classrooms, in the lunchrooms, drive the buses, all the places that we need them, and we are not funded to be able to pay all those people to be at work or to have them in positions. So that's a big part of why we still need to do a levy. But another big part is the programs that we need to do to help our kids be successful. And there's a lot of new or growing programs that we've been working on over the last couple of years. One of the things that's really important to our board and our community is that we remember that our kids are more than just readers and writers and mathematicians. Those are important things, but our kids are musicians and artists and performers and athletes, and all of those opportunities for kids are not funded by the state. In the last few years, we have added back positions that disappeared when we had all the major emphasis from the state and from ourselves on testing. So we have added back more arts and music positions. We now have an orchestra at the middle school that has 60 plus kids in it. We had our first stab at bringing that orchestra into the high school this past fall, and had a teacher volunteer to work a 0 period, so to work a whole day plus an extra period before everybody else gets to school, to be able to work with those students on strings. We've added a full-time art teacher at the middle school this year. We haven't had that for years. And we've added 2 programs to support visual arts at the elementary school this year. We're trying to squeeze the money out of every place we can find it. So K through 2, we have added a full-time teacher who splits between the 2 buildings to be the visual arts teacher, and he works right in that rotation with PE and science and music, and now they have visual arts too, and library. And then for grades 3 through 5, because we don't have enough students to juggle a little money to be able to have that position full-time for them either, we found a program that's working extremely well at Peninsula School District that they've been doing for about 20 years, that engages parents and other community members as volunteer art teachers in the classroom with our kids, and we bring them in and they get trained on how to do the project and all of the history behind the artist that their project is based on, or the technique, or both, and then they get to go in and do it with kids. So we now have that program in grades 3 through 5. So we're trying really, really hard to bring the things into the schools that makes the kids want to be there, want to be successful, and feel a connection. In addition, we've been doing, in the last 3 years, we've been surveying our kids and our teachers and our families. And repeatedly, one of the things that we're finding out, and probably all of you could tell me this, is that our kids have an intense amount of social emotional needs and mental health issues that we don't probably none of us understand, because we didn't have those to the same degree when we were in school. But our kids have pressures that are creating those, and we have to, if you are so stressed that you are thinking constantly about why are you even here and what can you do about it, and why do you even exist, then you can't learn. So we have to address those things first. And we put together a number of programs to do that. We've changed the way we look at ourselves, and we've described what we do in our schools as whole child, whole school, whole community. And we're working really hard on the whole child. We've been scooping up the whole school. The next step is to scoop in more of the community and bring the whole community on board with helping the kids and being welcome and part of what's happening in the schools. So as we do that, we have added mental health supports for our kids in a variety of ways, and also physical health supports. We have a wonderful partnership that began last year with Peninsula Community Health. It continues this year as they've moved into the space that we made available in the old music room in the community gym for a health center for staff and students. And that has been extremely powerful. Last year, when they were just 1 day a week at the high school and 1 day a week at the middle school, they average, with one employee, they averaged doing 6 physical health visits with kids during each day and 15 mental health visits. So our kids need that support. And we're really excited that we have it right there on campus. And they operate separately from us, so they do their own billing, and they work to find ways to pay for any supports that kids need that don't have insurance and other supports. So they are separate, but they're a partner, and we're really happy to have them there. Another thing that we did as we looked at how is the whole kid doing, is we looked at where is it starting when we're not making it with our kids. And when we really take a hard look at it, it's at before they start school. So we have the data, and it's gotten worse in the last 8 to 10 years. We have the data that shows that kids in North Mason right now, on average, only 30% of them have ever gone to any kind of preschool program. And unsurprisingly, only 30% of them are ready for kindergarten when we do an assessment at the beginning of the year and see if they're ready to learn at the kindergarten level. So we know that we have to do something better. We strengthened our partnership with the ESD 114 in Bremerton to bring a stronger, more effective Head Start and ECAP program back into our community at Feller Early Learning Center. We are looking to expand. We've expanded the seats in that program. We've more than doubled them in the last year. We're looking to expand more. We are really focused. We're not going to take away business from those providers in our community, those private providers. But right now, they have really long waiting lists, and we have over 100 kids who come to kindergarten every year not ready for kindergarten. So the other thing that we've done is there's a program that's been very successful for the last 5 or so years, 5 to 10 years in Bellingham. That's called, in Bellingham, they call it Promise K. It's early entrance kindergarten. So there's kind of a loophole that we found in how schools are funded at the state level. And if we check all the boxes in the rules for early entrance kindergarten, we can fund those seats in a classroom for kids in the same way we fund seats for kids in our other classrooms. So the rules are very simple. They have to be 4 or 5-year-olds who would be going to kindergarten the following year. It's not a full year program. I was just talking to Kat. She has 2 kiddos who have been accepted into the first class of the program that opens in January. They have to never have attended a preschool program. And when we do a kindergarten ready assessment with them and their family, they have to be identified as needing to be in the program. So we're very excited that we are able to, we're pushing to get another portable classroom in place, but we have a backup plan if that doesn't work, and we will be starting early entrance kindergarten after the first of the year. We have a minimum of 1 classroom. If Brittany, the teacher who's doing the child find and recruiting, gets enough kids, we'll open 2 classrooms. But we know we have 1 classroom filled at this point in time. And we're very excited because the curriculum that they're using aligns with the curriculum that they will use in kindergarten in the fall. And we will be able to really work on the social emotional, being socialized for school, because we're finding that we have a lot of kids who, because they haven't had other experiences, and maybe they haven't had the experiences that many of us or our children had growing up, but when you go to Sunday school, for example, you kind of learn what school is about. But if you haven't had any of those kinds of experiences, keeping your hands to yourself, sitting in circle, not pushing or shoving in line, all of those things have to be learned. And so that's part of what we'll do in that program, as well as the pre-reading and pre-math and all of those things. So we're really excited about that. But all of those things mean that we have to look at how we're doing things and how we best provide what the community needs. And in our community right now, our kids need an opportunity to be successful, and we need to start before kindergarten. So those are some of the programs that we have going on. I think that's a lot, and I can probably take a few questions and go from there. Yes?
I've got a question for you. The Bridgeview Elementary School has a program called Watchdogs. Are you familiar with that? Is there some interest in doing that in our 2 elementary schools?
Our 2 elementary schools have watchdogs.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Good.
And so does the middle school. They started just last year, I think.
Very good.
It's a great program, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can you explain that?
Watchdogs brings parents, sometimes grandparents, into the school, and there's a training. Often it's fathers. At our middle school, that we have an auxiliary name for female volunteers, and I can't remember what it is right now, but it's usually fathers or grandfathers or uncles or community members, and they come in and they are in the lunchroom, they're in the outside activities, sometimes they're in the classrooms. They're there to support kids and to support teachers in having a successful day. They'll play with kids, they'll read to kids, they do all sorts of things. They help set up games and activities outside, all sorts of things. It's a really great volunteer training program.
Do you know how many volunteers per school?
No, but if I get your information, I'll get it to you. Yeah.
Right. Well, I've got another question.
Okay.
Don't take this as an attack.
That's all right.
I want some clarification on the senior parking up there. Apparently the school sells them a graduating senior.
Well, maybe. We tried that this year. So the senior class made a proposal, and the idea was to rent a parking space for the year, and then they had some very specific rules. And unfortunately, when they went through the approval process, they missed one very important thing. And we have a requirement in school districts that we cannot do anything in our official capacity, on school grounds, on our website, etc., that supports any side in an election. Or we can't even have our levy signs up on our school property. So we can't have anything that has to do with an election or a political party kind of thing, or that was used as, or might be used again as part of a campaign. So one of the students painted, part of his painting was representative of President Trump's political campaign from last year. And it couldn't stay. And like I explained to the student, if somebody put whatever Bernie's slogan is, or Warren's, or whoever on their parking spot, it would be the same thing. We cannot have politics, political signs on school grounds. So,
Are you going to just continue that offer?
well, we're thinking about it. I mean, we were out on a limb a little bit anyway. The insurance companies and the school lawyers around the state really don't like those activities. So we're thinking about it. We've clarified what the rules are, and you know, it's kind of a cool thing, and I'd like to see it continue for kids, but we haven't made a decision yet.
Well, I noticed on one of them out there, we go to soccer, we did go to soccer practice for the grandkids. And one of them that didn't, I guess that was just one that was painted out.
Just one, yeah.
There is one up there that I noticed, it's a Bible verse.
What?
A Bible verse. A Bible,
Yes, there is.
Now, that they can do.
They can, and I wish I had the email in front of me because I had to ask for multiple clarifications on this from our attorney, so I probably won't get it perfectly. But basically what it is students do have the right to express their religion in school, on school grounds, and in a way that's not proselytizing. So that particular Bible verse is like the one about, you know, set high goals for yourself and then you'll succeed kind of thing. And so we had to call the attorneys and check with them, and they said there is no way you can cover up that one, because that would be a violation of the student's right to express their religion without trying to proselytize to anybody else. So that one is still there. Yes?
I have a dumb question. I always think of dumb things.
That's okay.
Okay. What's the difference between that and that coach that was praying in Bremerton? What is the difference between that? If you can do one, and you can't do the other, what's the difference?
Kids can. Adults who are employees have different rules. And in that particular case, I mean, I do not want to get in trouble with anybody in Bremerton arguing this here. However, in that particular case, if you read his contract, it very specifically says that that's not going to happen. So from the school district side, that's where their argument comes. It's not about free religion or free speech. It's about he broke his contract. So, but that's, you know, everybody has a side in that, and that courts are going to decide that one.
I guess I didn't finish. What came to mind was the fact that, is this a state rule?
It's a state law for schools,
State law.
yeah. Yeah, we have no choice. It's not a decision our school board made, or I made, or the principal made. We could lose funding.
What happened with I think it was a fellow, wasn't it?
The young man?
Yeah, young man.
Yeah, well, he had plans. We met a couple of times, and he had plans to change his painting to celebrate his interest in motocross. But I don't know if he's done that yet. I don't think he has, but that was his plan. Yeah.
The only thing that bothered me, and the reason I brought it up, was a question of free speech. We want our kids to grow up realizing that they have the right to express themselves most of the time. You can't
Yes.
do something, but
They do,
have to
and
work within
they often do, and the hard part for us was, the argument was, you know, or the place we had to make the decision is because the district allowed the use of the district space, then it's the district who is in effect speaking that sign and not the student, and that's where we had to say we can't have it. If he, and I told him, and he's done it a few times, if he has bumper stickers on his vehicle, or a flag for Trump from, you know, the campaign, the big flags, or from another person running for office, or any kind of signs on his vehicle, or wears a shirt or a hat, As long as there's nothing disruptive to the school environment, that's perfectly fine. So it's just that it was painted on school property.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How did you ever come up with the, even selling, renting a space to the students at school?
That was Spencer's idea, one of our senior class officers. He is very creative. And, they wanted to do a fundraiser that would be fun and that would be kind of visible and school spirity and that kind of thing. So they found all the rules elsewhere in the state and in the country and brought them to the principal. It took 2 years to get it approved. Last year, everyone said, no, we don't want to talk about it. And this year, we let them try it. And they did a pretty good job. They sold spots only to seniors and rented, and only to teachers. And it was for a little bit more than the cost of a parking, they have to get a parking pass normally anyway. And they took a spot, I forget the exact dimensions, but that if the car is parked, you could see the whole sign at the back of the parking spot. And they painted a rectangle, a blue or white rectangle there. And then you had to stay within the box. Anything you painted had to stay within the box. And then at the end of the year, the box will get painted over and maybe be reused again. We'll see.
Does it go into the ASB budget?
Yes, it goes into the senior class budget. So it helped pay for, I don't know if you were at the football games at the end of the year, but that great big blow-up thing that the senior class, that the tunnel, the Bulldog tunnel for the kids to run through onto the field, the senior class purchased that. Yes, Ken?
I wanted to ask, has the board had any long-range visioning about building a new Belfair Elementary School?
We are starting. We unfortunately, we do have to do a levy first. And so we're going to hopefully go through that process and have a positive election this spring. And then we will be recruiting community members to be part of the committee to start looking right away at what to do next. We have, this year I commissioned a study of our demographics and with the demographers company to do some projections for the next 10 years. The unfortunate part about having those projections done is when they do them, they start with things like the very simple things like the birth rate, where whoever the parents, if the parents, people who were living in North Mason School District when they gave birth, whichever hospital they gave birth at, somehow they can find all that information and they can predict the size of our kindergarten class for the year 5 years later, right? And interestingly, we were off a little bit. Luckily, we are always very conservative in our numbers, so our kindergarten class is a little smaller this year than it has been in recent years, but our high school and our middle school are kind of exploding, so it made up for that. But if we'd had the demographers report in the summer, we would have known, because they were only one student off in their projection of what, and people moving in and out, that's pretty good. So their numbers were pretty good for what they started with, but they start with those kind of numbers and other research that they do. But another thing that they use is what building projects are in the pipeline. And unfortunately, they cannot, not all the ones that I've heard heard about, and I can say, oh, I heard there's going to be this one here, and it's going to be this many houses, and this one over here is going to be this many, single family but units together, or whatever the different projects are going to be. Unless they're already in the pipeline with some permitting and things going on, they don't get put in the report. So the report is probably pretty conservative in number, but that report says on the low end we'll be at over 3,000 kids in 2028, and at the high end we'll be close to 4,000. So that's a lot of growth. We're at 2,600 bodies right now, just over 2,600, 2,360 full-time equivalent, because some kids are not full-time at school. They go to Running Start or West Sound Tech or something. So we're growing. We've been growing between 75 and 100 kids a year for each of the last 4 or 5 years, so we're growing a lot in 6 years, but it looks like it's going to expand. And that left out some of the building projects that have in the last couple months come to light, or we've been hearing about, or businesses that are now going to be opening sites within our community. So fortunately, the report also explains the formulas we can apply to all of that to change those demographics, so we don't have to pay for another report right away, and we can use some formulas and just touch base. But growth is going to be a really big deal, so we are going to need to include that in what we look at. Our plan is to hopefully have a successful levy election, and then start planning a bond project for building a new Belfair and moving it. As part of that process, I have a meeting tomorrow with our bond council. So one of the things we want to do, we want to try to keep costs as low as possible for our community members. Even though we're growing, we know how expensive it is when we ask you to support these things. So we are also looking at refinancing our existing bond, since that will bring down everybody's check, or however we have to pay our taxes. So that we have that meeting tomorrow to look at the interest rates have gotten so good, and our rating went up this year. We're very proud of that. So we can look at refinancing and bringing the bond costs down for our community members before we ask you to approve the levy or ultimately approve a bond to build Belfair. But we will need to move it. The location, as everybody knows, is problematic in a number of ways, and the size of it's bursting at the seams. So if we're going to grow that much, we'll build a bigger Belfair Elementary as a starting point, and then kind of keep an eye on, in school funding, you can't really, it's kind of like that. If you build it, they will come in the movie. We can't do that. We have to wait till they come and they've been hanging from the rafters, and then we get to build it. So we're at that point with elementary schools that we need more space, and we will be able to build a big enough school with maybe some additional space added on at Sand Hill and or the middle school to be able to house kids where we need to house them and get us over the hump till the next time it's appropriate to talk to our community about we need more space. So.
Is that the law still, that you have to project and build to capacity upon opening? That's the way they used to work?
Yeah, we can't build for the kids we think are going to be here in 10 years, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So. And the other, this is one I remember, the other thing with school funding that's really frustrating is there's the thing called match. So when we got the last bond that the community approved and that we're so thankful for, we got some what's called state matching funds. So for example, on the high school, the state matching dollars were about $9 million. And guess what? The taxes to build the high school were about $9 million. So we didn't get to invest that $9 million in the high school. We had to pay it right back to the state. So that's one thing that I'm arguing with as we go to the legislators and stuff is that schools are a government agency. The money that we're getting from the state to help us pay it's already tax money that our taxpayers have paid. So when you give us that money as matching funds to help us build our school, it should help us build our school. So that's one of the things we're fighting for right now. Because when you look at that's a whole, at the high school, if we had that money instead of paying it back for, paying it to them for sales tax, we'd have the other wing that we might need someday. We could have built that with the $9 million. So it is what it is, and we'll do our best. One of the things we are doing though, because Belfair Elementary sits where it sits, we took advantage of an opportunity from the state a couple of years ago to have a seismic study done, and they're doing a follow-up study now. But that study put us in a position to apply for grants from FEMA to help us make that move, because the hillside where Belfair sits, not to scare everybody, but the hillside is a site that could liquefy in the right kind of earthquake, you know, so like in the 1950s in Alaska, in Anchorage, and actually most of the coast of Alaska was hit by a huge earthquake, and there were whole communities that liquefied and fell into the water there, and so we don't want that to happen. We want to move, but the FEMA grant would pay us up to $3 million towards the cost of moving the school. So we are in the process of applying for that to help with the cost. We'll try to do everything we can to put as little cost as we can on our taxpayers when we have to do that. So, did that answer your question, Anna?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, what you just said sort of nullifies my question.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to ask it anyway. What would happen to the old Belfair Elementary then? Would there be plans for anything?
Well, we're looking at a couple things because that could happen, but it could also never happen, you know. But not necessarily for us. What we might do is find somebody else who would have a really good use. One of the things I talked to a few people about, and we're still talking, but it's until we're ready to move out of the building, they're not really interested in continuing the conversation. But one of the ideas is, you know, our biggest employer in the greater Kitsap, Mason County area is the military, or at least one of them, or related to the military. And when you go to big military bases like Naval Base Kitsap, in other parts of the country, things like the Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department, which supports the sailors and their families, have big sites everywhere and not just on base. So what I have recommended to the Navy is that they need to look at a purchase of Belfair Elementary, because they could site a preschool for service members and employees in that spot. I know, that was before we got the report. But they could also cite an MWR center for sailors and employees and families that could include turning the classrooms and the gym in, well, the gym is a gym, but turning some rooms into weight rooms and using it as a place. You know, a lot of MWR centers are where you rent all your equipment for going on vacation. And what a great place for them to put kayaks and rafts and hiking equipment and things for people to take and use out on the Olympic Peninsula. So it's actually an idea they're thinking about, but that's one idea. There would be a lot of different things that we could do. We probably would not retain Belfair as a school site because of the problems that have been identified with that site. But there might be other people who could use it for a variety of reasons and with, you know, different kinds of concerns than we might have. So we're thinking about things. We can't really talk to anybody as long as we have little 600 and 500 little bodies running around there all the time, so. Yes.
Now, getting back to the levy,
Yes.
how much is that going to be, and what's that applied to that?
Yeah, when you said that, I just remembered, I didn't bring that part up. So we have tried really hard to keep the levy low. Each of the last 2 times we run the levy, so each of the last 2 times voters have approved it at a 236 per thousand level in that approval year for the homeowners. So the levy that we put together is once again 236 per thousand. That, because property values have risen, that puts us at collecting more than we have. We still are playing with the number, but I can tell you that the parameters it's in, because there are so many homeowners right now who got their property tax bills and were concerned about how big their increase was. And so we know we're hearing from realtors that a lot of people are possibly appealing. So that could change the number, but we would collect between 5.5 and 5.9 million in the first year at that 236 level.
And is this, the levy, is it to support, say for instance, you're talking about custodians? Are they on the job now, or is it to hire custodians?
Now, those are the people we have that you were supporting already, the levy. So it supports those positions, but often what we do is we move the basic ed money we get from the state into supporting our employees, because the fact of the matter is that almost all of our employees are union employees. So they have jobs unless we get to a very serious reduction in force level. And so we have to use our budget in a way that supports them staying in those jobs. But those positions might be in jeopardy, but certainly programs would be where we'd have to look first. So some of the new things that I'm talking about that we're doing to support kids, we'd have to take a look at.
That was my second part of the question, is it the same scenario where it doesn't have to cut back?
Yeah, probably it would be.
So we're not replacing the levy?
This is a replacement levy.
Replacement, okay.
Yeah. We're not, one of our neighbors, and not throwing anybody under the bus, but one of our neighbors is doing a replacement levy and a capital projects levy. They're big enough that doing a capital projects levy brings in enough money to do some pretty big projects that they need to do. But we're just trying to stick to one thing at a time. We don't want to confuse the issue. We want to be able to be really clear about why we need what we need, and that we're trying to be frugal and respect our community members and not ask for more than we absolutely have to. So we think in order to be really clear in our message, we need to just talk about that for right now. And then once we've completed that conversation, hopefully successfully, then we're going to have to get some community members at the table to help us look at what do we need to do about Belfair Elementary School. So. Yes.
How's the stadium coming along?
It's almost done. Have you been up there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were putting a roof on the other day.
They're putting a roof on. They're putting the rest of the seats in. They bolted down the press box. So it's almost done. And the scoreboard, unfortunately, we had to go back and start over and get a new construction company to complete the scoreboard. And Ashley was getting the third of the 3 bids we have to get to do that today. So they'll be able to get started. All of those bids are coming in under the amount that means I can approve it without it going to the board for approval. So I'll be able to approve the scoreboard job and get it done as soon as we've got that 3rd bid in.
Will there be a big party or something?
We need to, don't we? Yeah. And then we have enough, just one more thing, Ken. We have enough dollars left from the non-voted debt that we took out to help us complete the stadium project that we will be, we have started going out for bids to build a new softball field on Centrex Field, so that our softball field is not significantly less than our baseball field and meets tight and is an appropriate facility for the young ladies in our community.
I wanted to ask if the state's been in, have they finalized that south end connection to the bits of school?
We haven't talked to them about, other than at those meetings, and we do have some concerns with that connection that we are trying to make sure they understand, and we're going to maybe have to get some help with that, because we think that they could have, the other area going through our bus barn would have made more sense and would be less of a safety issue than where they're wanting to go right now. So we're hoping that we can still push that conversation that way.
I'm curious, the last I saw it.
Yeah, they're kind of not listening right now, but so we're engaging some helpers in that conversation who have some oomph.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Since you're planning on working on the softball fields and stuff like that, Is there any planning to maybe put some lighting from the student parking lot up to the high school? Because I've been there from the football games and stuff, and my son goes there. He's there super early in the morning, super late at night. And if you actually walk that path, there's no lighting at all. It's really dark. And so I would think there's some sort of safety issue there. So I didn't know if you guys were aware of it, but it is very dark on that path.
Yeah.
So I hope that someone,
Well, I appreciate that. It's not in the plans right now, but it is on our list of capital projects. So the next capital projects, though, that we can do out of our general fund, we need a new roof at Sand Hill, and so that is next. And then after that, we can go down the list, and that will be happening during spring break. So we were hoping it would happen before school started. The company that won the bid had too many other bids they had already won, so spring break.
maybe for his senior year, he won't be walking in the dark.
Maybe.
But then he'll be parked up top, so it won't matter.
Ooh, LED lights are on the parking spot.
Anything else? Judy?
I know it's probably not even a thought, but I've seen lots of posts about having schools bring back shop and home ec and stuff like that because there's a need. So has that ever been on the radar?
Oh, we've talked about it a lot, but we have a wood shop,
Oh, okay.
and we won't bring back
Okay.
car shop
Oh,
because we have a partnership with West Sound Tech and our kids who want those programs and welding and some of the things that are very expensive to build a space for and that we don't have right now. They go to West Sound Tech with our partnership with all the school districts sending kids there in Bremerton, and they take the auto shop classes and welding and hospitality industry and beautician classes and all of those kinds of things. Yeah, cosmetology. So we do have a space that we built in the new school for family and consumer science, and they're really hard to find teachers anymore. It's kind of like, we have an agriculture teacher, and those are really hard to find on the tree too. So we are funded for a certain number of staff for the kids that we have. So right now, we can't hire more staff in that area unless some people retire. We believe that we may be hiring more people in that area, but until I see those letters, I can't really. You can watch and see if we post for a family and consumer science teacher later this year. Yeah. It would be really great. And one of the other things I didn't talk about, but we're, as part of our preschool partnership that we're in the process of doing, but we don't want to, we're so excited that we could jump in right now, but we kind of need to wait and do all of the steps instead of doing them after the fact. But one of the needs in our community, and some years it's a need and some years it's not, and so it's a harder kind of problem or project to keep going. But sometimes we have students who are parenting, whether they're moms or dads, but they're parenting, and that can really make it hard to be a student. And one of the partnerships that we're looking at doing with the preschool program out of the ESD allows our parenting students to be here and go to school while somebody very qualified is watching their student there on campus. And the parenting student has to do a certain amount of time in that program so they can learn how to care for kids either at home or in a work environment, and then they can earn some family and consumer science credit towards graduation, but also have their kids in a really safe place. So we're looking at a project like that. South Kitsap has had a program like that for 20 years. They're a lot bigger, so They do have kids every year who need the program. We have some years where we don't have any high school or middle school students who are parenting, and we have some years where we have a lot. But it's a program where we might be able to be kind of flexible and put in some supports for kids, and then that's a little bit of a hybrid. It's preschool, but it's also childcare, so there are some different rules and things. So we are talking to the ESD about putting that in place, but we have to make sure that we can cross all the T's and dot all the I's and do everything correctly. Yes?
Does the North Mesa School District receive impact funds from the federal government?
We do, and I wish we received as much as our neighbors in Central Kitsap. Our average check is $25,000 to $40,000. Maybe we get $50,000 in a year. We don't get much more than that. In CK, theirs is in the millions, and I would really like to get some. So our population of families who would get us the impact aid is growing, and it's growing in two ways. We are getting a lot more families who work on one of the federal properties, whether they work at the shipyard or they're enlisted or a naval, or Marine or whatever, enlisted or officer or whatever. So those people count. Also, families with Native American count and can get impact aid there. And our district hasn't done a very good job of counting those families and getting them to fill out the impact aid forms. And so that's an area that can help us get more dollars. So we're working on that. This year, the feds changed the program and the sign up is electronic. And we're running into some struggles with that because not everybody in our community can do electronic. And so we did get special permission to, if we promised to try electronic first, then we could still do the old-fashioned paper way so we could get it from all of our families. And I think in December we get to start sending out the paper because our numbers, we're not approaching the numbers that we had in the past that turned in the forms. But Tammy or somebody in the business office can run a report on Skyward and we can see how many people should have turned in the forms and didn't. So we are going to work from there. But it is a place we have to look for funding, and we have to be really careful because as our populations that meet the requirement grow, we can get a lot more money for the programs at school. So, and for those of you who don't know, there are several different classifications of students and their families who qualify for federal impact aid because something that they have to do with the federal government, or in the case of Native Americans because of their tribal history, there's anticipated an impact on costs for the school district for serving the kids. So they will pay, the feds, will pay some additional dollars for each child that has the form filled out correctly. So that's what we're working on. Every year we work on that and do our best, but they're really working hard to get as accurate and clear numbers as they can this year, so including all of the categories. And we've always focused on the military connected category, and we need to focus on all the categories where we can get those dollars.
One more question.
Yes.
Is there any part of the curriculum up there at the high school that actually deals with survival skills such as money handling and balancing your...
Yeah, we actually have a financial class that most 9th or 10th graders take. Can't think of the title of it right now, but yeah, we do have a class
Do
that
they
does
all
that.
take it, or just if they want to take it?
It's a choice. Yeah. Also, we are working, we're going to do a financial fitness fair for the kids. We're going to start doing that every year too. It's just a one-day event, but it gets some awareness, and yeah.
Good.
And we'll be looking for community members who want to help with that too. Well, I really appreciate it. Please, if you have any questions or anything you want to know as you start to get the information from us or think about it after you leave, let me know and I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Thank you very much.
Me too.